Walk into any major game showcase, browse a digital storefront, or watch a seasonal reveal event, and a pattern quickly becomes apparent. A sequel, a remake, a remaster, a reboot, a spin-off. While the names and settings may differ, the underlying structure of many releases remains largely unchanged. Annual franchise entries, revived classics, and expanded universes now make up a significant portion of the industry's release calendar, particularly among large publishers. This sense of familiarity has led to an ongoing conversation among players, critics, and developers. Why does an industry built on creativity and technological innovation rely so heavily on existing intellectual property? And more broadly, why does the creation of new IP appear increasingly rare at the highest levels of production? This is not a story about a lack of ideas, it is a story about scale, economics, and risk. I'm your host Dan, and today I'm going to be discussing why the video game industry is afraid of new ideas. To understand this reluctance, it is important to examine how modern AAA games are made. Large-scale releases today often require budgets reaching into the tens or hundreds or even millions of dollars. Once development, marketing, licensing, post-launch support, and, increasingly, live service infrastructure are accounted for, these figures have steadily increased since the late 2000s, alongside rising production values and audience expectations. Teams are frequently composed of hundreds or even thousands of developers spread across multiple studios and regions. Major franchises such as Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, or Grand Theft Auto are developed over many years and are expected to perform consistently across global markets. At this scale, failure is no longer a creative setback. It is a financial event with measurable consequences. As production costs have increased, the margin for error has narrowed. Earlier eras of the industry, particularly during the 90s and the early 2000s, operated with smaller teams, shorter development cycles, and comparatively modest budgets. While commercial failure was undesirable, it rarely placed an entire organization at risk. In contrast, a modern AAA release represents years of work and substantial capital investment. If a project underperforms, the impact can extend beyond sales figures, contributing to studio closures, layoffs, cancelled projects, or long-term strategic shifts, outcomes that have become increasingly visible across the industry in recent years. As a result, risk is no longer assessed solely in creative terms. It is evaluated in terms of sustainability, predictability, and long-term business stability. Within this environment, established intellectual property offers a degree of reassurance. Sequels benefit from an existing audience and a proven market. Franchises such as FIFA, NBA 2K, and Call of Duty are familiar to consumers and investors alike, often releasing on predictable schedules that allow sales performances to be forecast with relative confidence. Remakes and remasters serve a similar function. Titles such as Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, or The Last of Us Part 1 are based on known quantities, often supported by nostalgia and prior critical recognition. In many cases, these projects also benefit from modernized technology while retaining familiar design foundations. From a business standpoint, these projects are not risk-free, but they are comparatively easier to justify. Predictability plays a central role in how publishers plan their portfolios. Existing IP allows performance to be measured against historical data. Marketing strategies can be refined using previous campaigns, and internal benchmarks help define success or failure before release. A new IP offers none of these reference points. It must establish awareness, trust, and relevance simultaneously, often in a marketplace crowded with established brands competing for attention across console, PC, and mobile platforms. In this context, familiarity functions as a stabilizing force, shaping release schedules and long-term planning decisions. For a significant period of time, particularly during the late 1990s and early 2000s, risk in the industry was mitigated not only by intellectual property, but by developer reputation. Certain studios functioned as quality signals. A new project from a respected developer suggested a baseline level of craft, even when the concept itself was unfamiliar. Studios such as Bethesda, BioWare, Blizzard, or Valve once occupied this space. Announcements of new titles from these developers generated anticipation, largely on the strength of past releases, with audiences trusting that the studio's creative identity would carry over into new work. Over time, this relationship has weakened. Changes in leadership, internal restructuring, studio growth, publisher influence, and shifting development priorities have made developer branding less reliable as the predictor of quality. As studios expand or change ownership, continuity of creative vision becomes harder to maintain. As a result, a developer's name alone no longer offsets the perceived risk of launching new intellectual property. In many cases, the franchise brand now carries more weight than the studio behind it. New IP now carries a distinct and compounded set of challenges. A first entry must communicate its identity clearly, introducing its mechanics, world, tone, and narrative without the benefit of prior recognition, and often without the additional trust once provided by a studio's reputation. Even positive critical reception does not guarantee commercial success. Games such as Prey 2017 or Titanfall 2 are frequently referenced as examples of strong creative efforts that struggle to meet sales expectations at launch, influenced by factors such as release timing, competition from larger franchises, or limited marketing visibility. Within publishing environments, these outcomes tend to reinforce caution rather than prompting reflection on external circumstances. They are often interpreted as evidence that originality carries disproportionate risk. As the industry has expanded, many major publishers have become part of large corporate and shareholder-driven structures. These organizations operate within frameworks that prioritize consistent growth and predictable returns, often evaluated on a quarterly basis. In such settings, creative proposals must be supported by financial projections, market analysis, and comparisons to existing products. A sequel can be justified using prior performance data. A remake can reference an existing audience. A new IP, regardless of creative merit, often lacks the metrics required to inspire confidence at an executive level. Over time, this reinforces a preference for franchises, shaping the types of projects that receive approval and long-term investments. This does not mean innovation has disappeared from the medium. Instead, much of it has shifted towards smaller studios and independent developers, where lower budgets and smaller teams allow for greater experimentation. Games such as Hades, Disco Elysium, Outer Wilds, and The Return of Obra Dinn demonstrate how creative risks can thrive outside the constraints of blockbuster production. These titles often explore unconventional mechanics, narrative structures, or thematic depth, contributing meaningfully to the evolution of the medium. However, their success does not always translate into structural change at the AAA level. They exist alongside large-scale franchises rather than reshaping them. Occasionally, a new IP achieves significant commercial success. When this happens, it is often framed internally as an exception rather than evidence of repeatable strategy. Success is attributed to specific circumstances such as timing, platform support, or market conditions rather than the broader viability of originality. In many cases, once a new IP is established, it quickly enters the same framework as older franchises, with sequels, expansions, and long-term monetization plans prioritized over further experimentation. What begins as a creative risk becomes an asset to manage. The long-term consequence for the industry of this approach is not immediate decline, but gradual homogenization. Genres become increasingly crowded, design conventions repeat, and innovation at the highest production levels become more incremental. While technical fidelity and production quality continue to improve, the sense of discovery that once defined major releases becomes less common. Audiences are not necessarily disengaged, but patterns become easier to recognize and expectations more predictable. My final thoughts on this. The video game industry's reliance on sequels, remakes and spin-offs is not the result of diminished creativity. It is the result of caution shaped by scale. As development costs rise and financial stakes increase, risks become something to be managed rather than embraced. Many of the industry's most successful franchises were once uncertain, untested ideas themselves. The central question is not whether developers are capable of creating something new, it is whether the structures surrounding them still allow space for that uncertainty to exist. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the perpetual releases of the same IP each year. What single standalone game you love, and what developer you still trust to release great games. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more gaming content. The three of us greatly appreciate it and love seeing you guys engage in the comments. This has been No Rush News, and we'll see you in the next one.